It's the weekly show with David J. Maloney.
This week, David chats with Jackyl frontman Jesse James Dupree.
And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome, everyone, to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. On tonight's show, we've got a really special guest. As frontman for the platinum-selling rock band Jackyl, he's been at the forefront of the rock world since the 90s, collaborating with ACDC's Brian Johnson and also producing some incredible solo records, one of which is his brand new record, Breathing Fire. Here after the break to chat about his life, career, and rock and roll is none other than Jackyl frontman Jesse James Dupree. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our featured guest tonight has been at the forefront of the rock world ever since his band Jackyl exploded onto the national stage with two back-to-back platinum-selling records in their self-titled debut and then sophomore album Push Comes to Shove. From collaborating with ACDC's Brian Johnson to crafting acclaimed solo records to reality television, liquor, and too many other interests to list, he's done it all and seen it all. Here to chat about his incredible life and career and brand new album Breathing Fire is none other than Jesse James Dupree. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hello, my brother. Thank you for having me.
So, Jesse, by the time you came onto the national stage, it was obvious to everyone rock and roll was your true love. But I'm curious how rock and roll became your true love. How did it originally enter your life? What kind of music filled your family home? Was it rock or something else?
My dad lost his job whenever I was like 12 years old. And he worked at Lockheed Aircraft. Lockheed, they build all the military airplanes and such. And he didn't have a 10th grade education. So when he lost his job, he sold everything we had, including my bicycle. And we moved to Gadsden, Alabama, and we moved into a little mobile home trailer in the back of an asphalt parking lot. And my dad bought a little cafe that he couldn't even boil water, but he bought a cafe. And he and my mom started running that little cafe. And all the truck drivers that used to haul steel from the steel plant in Gadsden would come in there and eat lunch and dinner. And there was a jukebox in that cafe. And so I got exposed to everything from the Rolling Stones, Deep Purple, Grand Funk Railroad, James Brown, and my favorite was Joe Tex. You remember? So Joe Tex had the best soulful scream voice. He had a song, I got you.
Oh, like James Brown.
Now, didn't. Huh?
Like James Brown.
Yeah, but he had a better scream than James. Wow! I mean, he was just great. But that's where I learned how to what I call power up, and was those guys. But I used to fill. We had the dill pickles came in a 5-gallon bucket for the put on the hamburgers in the restaurant, and when they would empty those out, I would wash them out. And when the guy would change the 45s out on the jukebox, he would give them to me. So I kept my 45s in that pickle bucket. And I'd go back in the back of that mobile home trailer and imitate singing all those incredible bands, like say from Grand Funk and the Rolling Stones to James Brown and Otis Redding and Joe Tex.
You know, you speak glowingly of the history of rock and what it's meant to you and your life. What was it originally that drew you into that world when you were just a kid discovering it? Was it that jukebox experience, or was there something else? Was there a show you went to? Was there something that just went, okay, this is what I want to do?
It was mainly, my uncle. My uncle, he never had success in the music business, but he wrote parts of songs. And my whole young life, he would be the life of a party, and he would get up and sing his parts of his songs, and some of which I went ahead and finished out. And wow. So there's a song called "Secret of the Bottle" on the second Jackyl album that we play it live every night, and people sing every word to it. But the bulk of that song my uncle had written, and I just finished out the verses and the chorus. But it was just being around him. And my mom used to wake me up in the middle of the night to watch, Johnny Carson with, Little Richard would be on there, or Frank Sinatra would be on there, or maybe even Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise or something crazy, But my mom always kind of put me in front of the television set to watch these great entertainers, and I think it just rubbed off.
Now, a band which has played a profound part in your story is ACDC. And within that band, Brian Johnson specifically, do you remember the moment you heard ACDC's Back in Black for the first time? And how did that
Yeah, I
happen?
do. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't remember that, right? One night, I'll tell you a story. One night, Brian and I went to a festival together, and the singer for ACDC, he and I, we rode up in he had a brand new Aston Martin, and it was the most badass car. And he had parked that Aston Martin out away from the backstage area because it was a beautiful car. He didn't want people dinging up against it, you know. And we had been at the festival for a good bit of the day. I'd actually received a plaque from the radio station because Jackyl was the most played band that year on that station down in Tampa. And so he looked at me at a certain point. He said, "It's getting a little bit late. Why don't we head back to the house and get something to eat?" Because he lives down there. And he goes, "Why don't we head back to the house and get something to eat and have some drinks?" I said, "Okay, let's go." So we got in the car and we were starting to leave, and Brian was driving this badass Aston Martin, and he cranked it up, and these kids come running across the field, and one of them had their Back in Black CD. And he rolled his window down, and they said, "Hey, can we please get you to sign this, Brian? You know, thank you. You know." And he signed it, and he's such a gentleman. And he goes, "Hey, I got Jesse, the singer of Jackyl here. You know, he should sign it too." And I'm sitting there going, "I'm not worthy to sign a Back in Black album," you know. And but he's such a great guy. And he gave the kids the CD, and they ran off happy. And he sat there and he stared off into the distance for a few minutes. And we were just sitting in that car, and it was sitting there idling. And I didn't know if something was wrong. I didn't know, because he just sat there and stared for me. And he says, "You know," he said, "I've never understood the autograph thing. You know, where did that come from that people would want your signature? You know?" And I said, "Well, maybe for me, you know, in Jackyl or any other band, I could see that." I said, "But everybody knows where they were when Elvis died. Everybody knows where they were the day that somebody stepped the first step on the moon, or everybody knows where they were, you know, all these momentous times, you know." And I said, "Everybody knows where they were the first time they heard Back in Black." And I said, "So, you know, I can understand why they would, you know, why that's a thing for you." And he went, "Ah," and then we drove off. But you know, he didn't think nothing else about it. But yeah, it's crazy. I was in Roanoke, Virginia, and the club had a DJ, and we were in between breaks. I was playing in a bar band. And the guy came on and said, "Here's the new ACDC," and he played it, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And you know, they changed everything.
And it's my understanding that, you know, in your younger days, you actually camped out for like 2 nights to get Back in Black tour tickets. Is that true?
Yeah, I used to camp out for 2 nights to get Back in Black tickets, or to get any concert tickets. But back then, that's what you had to do. You go down to the mall and you'd start a list, and people would show up and they would put their name on the list, and then you lined up the morning that the tickets went on sale in order of that you were on the list. And but yeah, so to go from, you know, camping out for 2 nights to get front row tickets all the way to where I'm standing beside him in the studio singing songs together, it was so it's a big honor. And it doesn't, you know, I still have to remind myself that it actually happened, because I mean, it's like one of those, something out of a movie, right?
And well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you look back at that specific moment in time. I mean, there you are, a young kid looking up to the stage at Brian Johnson and ACDC. There, Brian Johnson is looking out into the crowd with you in it, the future lead singer of Jackyl and his future collaborator. I mean, it's another one of those moments where it's almost as if there's a screenwriter somewhere writing the story. You know?
Yeah, stuff like that, just you wouldn't think it happens, but I've been very blessed. And you know, the same thing happened. You know, my son came to me in my office, and at the house, he said, "Hey, Dad, guess who's in the studio?" And I said, "Who's that?" And there's always somebody in the studio. I mean, Travis Tritt records in there, and Skid Row records in there, and just a bunch of different people's recorded in the studio. Izzy Stradlin, the guys from Georgia Satellites and stuff like that. But and he goes, "Guess who's in the studio?" And I said, "Who?" And he said, "It's DMC from Run DMC." I went, "Oh, cool." And he goes, "He wants you to come in and say hey to him." And Dee and I struck a friendship, and we've been friends ever since. And we've collaborated together. And so both DMC and Brian Johnson, both in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and both of them had landmark albums that changed music and the course of things. And so again, very very blessed to have been have. I'm scared to stop thinking about it too much because I'm not finished yet. I think there's still some more to happen.
Well, and this is probably a good segue into Jackyl. I mean, your band, which burst onto the national stage with their self-titled debut album, how did Jackyl first form, and how quickly did any of you start to realize that the band you just put together might be something really special?
Well, the guys in Jackyl, Jeff and Chris, they were younger guys that used to come out and see a previous band that I was in. And I used to hate it when they would come out and see us because they would get my guitar player so stoned that he couldn't remember how to play it. Or he would actually, he remembered how to play. He would just start jamming and hit a lead break and never come back to the song. But yeah, they were younger. They used to come out, and then I was managing a bar. Whenever my son was born, I came off the road to manage a bar. And I was booking them in there to play, and they asked me, they wanted a tape of my original songs. They wanted to play them. And I would get up and sit in with them and sing those songs, and the place would pack out, people coming in to see if I was going to be sitting in with them. So we knew we had something special from that moment. And then it took off after that.
How did you guys first find out Geffen was interested in signing you? I mean, was it a call, a meeting, whispers going around the industry, or something else?
No, Geffen was not interested in us.
Really?
Nobody knew anything about us or anything. We were interested in John Kalodner at Geffen. For a whole year, every single night when we played in the bars, I would find somebody that was in the crowd with a beard, and I would put the spotlight on them and introduce them as John Kalodner. And I played for John Kalodner every single night for a year until it finally happened. We went to LA. We all lived in one motel room, 9 of us in one motel room for 2 weeks. And everybody got $6 a day to eat on. And we ate 3 for $1 AM/PM hot dogs, the AM/PM convenience store. Mm-hmm. We ate 3 for $1 hot dogs for the whole 2 weeks. And we did not let up until we finally were able to get a commitment for John to come and see us.
I'm glad you brought that up because, like I said earlier, you guys pretty much exploded onto the national scene with your self-titled debut album. But every time I've seen something like that happen so fast, there's almost always years of silent, unnoticed work nobody ever saw, which allowed something special like that to happen. You know what I mean? So people go, oh, they just did this and this. And it's important, I think, for people to know that, yeah, there's all this behind the scenes work that built up to that for so long, and all the struggle and everything else.
I had 9 years of really struggling hard in another band. Did a development deal with Polydor Records that ended up not happening because they wanted me to leave the band. They wanted me to get younger guys because the guys in the band were older than me. And I wouldn't do it. And then I found out I was going to be a father. So I came off the road and had my son, my child, and got all of that kind of in its place. And then the Jackyl opportunity came about. But really, once that commitment was made to hit the road with Jackyl, I mean, we were signed within 1 year. I mean, that happened quick in the scheme of things. But it was because I'd already went down all I'd paid my dues for those 9 years. I mean, I was more focused than ever, as far as my part of the success that we had. And the band is that, we move as a unit, and we're all brothers, and it worked out.
Was there ever a moment in those early days where you thought music might not actually work out for you? I mean, that you may have been thinking, oh, I need a plan B?
Well, when I found out I was going to be a father, that changed everything, because at that point there, I'd made a deal with my dad. As long as I stayed single and without a kid, my family supported me being out there trying to make it. But my dad and my mom, they were, we pretty much lived hand to mouth. I mean, they were not well off, and so I thought when my son was born that I may be working a 9 to 5 or what, for the rest of my life. But the opportunity was so obvious with Jackyl. I knew that we could get a deal, and so for me, it was a no-brainer. And with having the responsibility of a child, there's a different level of commitment you make to yourself that you're going to go make something happen. And if I tell the guys in the band I'm going to walk through a brick wall, they put on their safety goggles.
Well, there you have it. Considering what happened once the Jackyl album was released, going platinum or perhaps even double platinum at that point, what was the feeling in the studio while you guys were recording? I mean, was there ever a moment in the studio where someone from the band or the production realized that you guys, had something special happening, that you might be grabbing lightning in a bottle?
No, recording the record it was a great experience, but it was almost, I won't say an inconvenience, but we were not consumed with having it take a long time. It was getting in the way of us being on the road and so we just wanted to get it done and get out. Brendan O'Brien did a great job he's a great producer, and, he'll let it rock and, put a microphone in front of it, press record, and there you go. And, so it's not a polished album. I mean, it sounds huge because he did a great job of capturing the sound, but I think the first Jackyl album is a great representation of the band. I mean, and it captured, I think you can tell by listening to it that we were not in there overthinking it. I mean, the whole thing was recorded and mixed within, 4 or 5 weeks at the most.
Now, at what point does the chainsaw enter into the equation? Was it in the studio or beforehand? And how the heck did that idea first come about?
We held the sales and attendance record for a place in Atlanta called Charlie Magruder's way prior to ever having a record deal. And the club owner was an excitable guy. He was a Vietnam vet, helicopter pilot. But his name was Butch, and he partied hard. And he left. He's passed away, but he left such an impression on thousands of people in Atlanta. I mean, he's still remembered yearly. I mean, his memory is not faded at all. And he provided a destination playground for all of us up and coming musicians, and so many people that have went on to do great things that played that venue. And I used to threaten him that I was going to bring a chainsaw in and cut up the bar because we had the sales and attendance record. I thought I could get away with it. So I went and rented a chainsaw from a tool rental place, and I stopped by Walmart and got some mailbox letters and put the mailbox letters on the bar of the chainsaw. And that night I was cutting stuff up, cutting his furniture and carved it into the ceiling. He was not happy. He docked us some money. He was upset. But at the end of the night, we were jamming around, had some guys get up, and we were playing a version of Jimi Hendrix's Red House, old blues song. And I grabbed the chainsaw and took a lead break with it. And my dad happened to be in the audience that night. My dad said, "You got to keep doing that." And I said, "Yeah, whatever." And I forgot. I took the chainsaw back, forgot about it. And about 2 weeks later, he shows up in a car to a show in South Carolina. But my dad didn't drive a car. He was always on his Harley. But he shows up, and I was going, "Why is he in a car?" And he opened up the trunk of the car, and he'd bought me a chainsaw. He goes, "You got to keep doing it." So that's where it came from.
Is there a song on the record which surprised you with how well it turned out? I mean, was it Down on Me or Lumberjack or maybe something else entirely?
Down on Me, because I wrote Down on Me for the band Kansas, and because I had came across the singer of Kansas in that bar I was telling you about one night, and and it was actually at a party that the club owner's house, and Steve Walsh was in there, and people were complimenting me on the band, and Steve goes, "Oh, we should write songs together." Well, I took him at face value that he was serious. He didn't have any intention of us writing together. But I went home and wrote Down on Me because Kansas had their last major label record deal that they were about to go and record. And I thought they need a song like this. And the production for the Down on Me that I wrote was more in the vein of Foreigner's I Want to Know What Love Is. I want to know what love is. So I heard a version of I feel the sun shining down on me with the chorus back, the big choir behind him. I feel the heat of love down on me. I heard a whole nother, all the things you mean to me, just a more of a crooning, big power ballad. And he blew me off. He never wanted to revisit writing with me. And then we ended up getting signed and to our record deal. And John Collider said, "I want to hear everything that you've ever written." So I worked up songs that I thought he would throw away because I knew the songs that I wanted us to keep. And we worked up Down on Me. I was thinking it was kind of a joke because we were plowing through it rock style, but in my head, I was hearing this big production, And so we play it for him, and he said, "I love that song." And I'm like, "Oh, what the hell have I done?" Because I didn't hear it. And I kid you not, we were in the middle of these pre-production rehearsals at a place called Rehearse Too Much in Atlanta, and the door opens up, and in walks Steve Walsh from Kansas, because he heard John was in the building. And I swear to God on my daughter, this is a true story. This was a year and a half later after maybe 2 years from the time that I'd written it for Steve Walsh, and he blew it off. By that time, his record came out and flopped, and they didn't sell anything. And so he came in, talked to John Collider. He ended up leaving. And John goes, "Can you believe that? The singer of Kansas just came into your," and I said, you know that song you just said you liked, Down on Me? And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "I wrote that for him." And I said, "But he blew me off." And John goes, "Do you know what the moral to that story is, Jesse Dupree?" And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "You've got a hit. He don't." and that's how that happened. It's just a crazy story, but that's the truth.
Well, the funny thing is now I'm going to go back and listen to it and go, how would this sound if Walsh or Ronnie Platt or whoever with Kansas was singing it, and how might that be different? And I
all
mentioned
the things I see in you,
yeah,
all the things I know that are true. I feel the sun shining down on me. I feel the heat. I mean, it was just a whole big production thing, And one day I'd like to get somebody to record it the way that I heard it in my head.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to Jesse James Dupree for joining us. Jesse's going to be back again next week for the next part of our interview, so please tune back in. Stay safe, everyone.